Well, this is a great gathering. It's so nice to see everyone face to face.
Louder.
We are so glad to see everyone face to face. It's been so long since we've had human
Mhm.
presence like this, which is wonderful. And thank you to the smartness of our friend Maya and Sherry's technical support as Vice President of Technology. We're able to see everybody where they are. So today is a wonderful celebration of 50 years, not only for CWI, but for other places, like other organizations, like Feminist Majority, right? And what are our other organizations? I'm sorry, I haven't been following.
Women's Sports Authority.
Oh, the
now.
women's sports, yeah, right. I mean, where would we be without women's sports? Truly,
Now.
we'd be a really,
No, we're old.
and now, right?
National Women's Political Caucus.
No.
Oh, yes, right.
Founded in 68.
That's right. So we're really, really lucky to have everybody here. And thank you, Melvina, for joining us. All right, so I would like to start off with our friend Ann Mitchell, who will speak about our history and what she worked up a long article.
And Martin. It's
And-
okay.
Ann Martin.
I answer to anything.
There's a lot of Anns.
As long as there's dessert available.
But anyway, we are so fortunate to have as many of you as we could. So I'd like to turn it over to Ann and she can start speaking about her project. that she-
Okay, thank you, Connie. It was a project of love for sure. And I know that probably all of us in this room remember Shirley Chisholm. Yeah, well, I love what she said. She said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, 50 years ago, society's table was woefully short of chairs, but thanks to the first and second waves of feminism, the table was being expanded and chairs were being brought out. And we may have thought we had a seat at the table with the civil rights in 1964, Title IX in 72. And of course, also in 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment was sent out on its journey among the states. But I would be remiss if I did not mention Roe versus Wade in 1973. And then there was the bone jarring lesson of the table or the chair being jerked from the table with the overturning of Roe. We thought it was a permanent chair at the table, but the Supreme Court made it not only a collapse, but a broken chair. But for all of us at the Clearinghouse, 1974 was a formative year. A very diverse group of women gathered to provide a channel for the exchange of information and matters of mutual concern. And it's real easy here in 2024 to forget that at that point in time, 1974, there was no internet. There were no cell phones, no multiple channels on TV, no multiple channels on the radio. CWI was founded. That's when CWI was founded to provide a forum to learn about and discuss the continued and continuing struggle for women's rights. These women were committed to the core values of feminism, achievement of political, economic, and social equality for all women. These are goals that have held up for 50 years, and they still serve as our clarion call. Our founding president was Abigail McCarthy. She was the wife of the former Senator Eugene McCarthy. She and the first board envisioned a forum to raise and discuss all of the issues that were of importance to women, to take those ideas back to the members' organizations and to directly disseminate this information on women's issues. Gloria Johnson, who was the president of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, stated that the Clearinghouse was unlike any other organization at that time. Remember, there was no internet. There was no YouTube, how to get the word out. So that led to the development of the newsletter, which was a formative document, having been a recipient of it. When I was traveling, I could always depend on the newsletter to keep me up to date. Now, in those early days, it was a multiple page document that had to be developed, then typed, then stamped, and then it had to be taken to the post office. But again, it was a labor of love and it served to achieve the purpose of sharing ideas as it provided not only detailed information about the previous month's speakers' comments, but critical announcements such as, for example, the release of a report on women's mental health by the American Psychological Association, Women's Programs Office, a notice from the Women's Pension Project that was seeking women who had been left out of pension plans. So you can see it was not just a newsletter, it was an advocate. The April 1985 newsletter introduced, are we ready for this? Announced the reintroduction of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah.
But as the decades of the 1980s closed and the board vowed to continue work on the unfinished agenda for women's issues, they included passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, legislation on non-discrimination in insurance, the Reproductive Health Equity Act, and improvement of child care standards. A theme when the CWI was first founded, and 50 years later, these issues we're still working. We're going to fast forward to 1998, when the Clearinghouse joined with more than 50 national organizations to reactivate the Coalition for Women's Appointments. This group worked to encourage the appointment of more females to fill key policymaking positions. Again, if you don't have a seat at the table, your voice is not going to be heard. Clearinghouse has always been active in current issues of the day. We joined arguments to the Supreme Court that the NCAA is subject to Title IX. We sent letters to national and international leaders on topics of gender apartheid in Afghanistan, Iraq. We sent letters on the Equal Rights Amendment. Remember CEDAW? The United Nations Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Yep.
I remember.
Some things you don't forget, do you?
Yes.
The Clearinghouse sent letters to then Secretary of State Colin Powell asking for hearings and also ratification of CEDAW echoes. A letter to the Secretary of Labor urged funding for training and technical assistance services for women to get them into the non-traditional occupations, to get them out of the occupations of nurses, secretaries, et cetera, et cetera. Sent letters urging the Office of Management and Budget to require contractors' compliance with non-discrimination requirements. Those of us who are in the room certainly have benefited from those leaders who started the Clearinghouse. CWI has always been a correspondent to the Department of Education regarding amendments to Title IX. And of course, the mother of Title IX, Bunny Sandler, was an active member of the Clearinghouse. But let's talk about some of the monthly programs. We met across the street for many years, then we moved here to the Alliance, but COVID did not stop the Clearinghouse. We then moved with technology to Zoom. Some of our monthly topics included women's health, including mental health, judicial selection, and women's issues, how the selection might affect women's issues, sexual harassment, discrimination, sexism, racism, women in the military, the media, museums, the arts, gender studies, the workplace, women in national security, women in prisons, why women need unions, why women need pay equity, Hispanic and Latino women, Arab American women, Muslim women, Medicare for women, unions, law enforcement, funding investments for gender equality, and always an examination of Supreme Court decisions and their effects on women and girls. We look at election results and expectations for incoming administrations. And we've never shied away from difficult subjects, no matter how sensitive or difficult. We've examined the trafficking of women and girls, violence against women, support to women and girls with disabilities, prostitution from the Civil War to today, the school to prison pipeline. We hear about that, but it's true also for women. School push-out, support for transgender athletes, how the United Nations Millennium Goals were working and their effects on women and girls around the globe, not just here in the US. Again, childcare, white privilege and male privilege, climate change, supporting progressive women who have the courage to run for office, protecting every vote, gerrymandering, and protecting, as always, the challenges to Title IX. Among our difficult topics, you may recall the election of 2016. Well, in 2017, we were looking at what to expect from that administration and how to preserve support for feminist goals. Why we march? 15 ways to stop a bigot was actually one of the topics in our monthly meeting. And of course, the Me Too movement. But we've also had happy topics over the years. Among our happy topics are special programs every February for Black History Month and March for Women's History Month, which actually began as Women's History Week, when President Carter designated March 2nd through 8th through National Women's History Week. 1 day and then 1 week and then 1 day was International Women's Day. And I thought it very interesting. I actually printed out his comments when he was making this designation. And what I found interesting was that part of his designation message was, too often women were unsung, and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed. He could have said through all of history, women were unsung and their contributions were, but that's okay. We got the designation. We've had special guests from the White House, Women's Council, the National Abortion Federation, NASA, the UN Information Center, the National Urban League Policy Institute, the American Psychological Association, Kathy Spillar, Eleanor Smeal, and I just can't even begin to name 50 years worth. But I'd like to close with 2 quotes from women, again, that I think we all know. First, it took me quite a long time to develop a voice, and now that I have it, I am not going to be silent. That was Madeleine Albright when she was Secretary of State. She describes us. We've had a voice for 50 years, and we will not be silent for the coming future. And from Gloria Steinem, women have 2 choices. Either she's a feminist or she's a masochist. Let that sink in. Either she's a feminist or she's a masochist. Also, thank you, Gloria. She said, the future depends entirely on what each of us does every day. A movement is only people moving. And that's what the Clearinghouse has been doing for the past 50 years. Moving, keeping the movement going. And I love this that was on display. You might recognize the National Museum of Women's Art. I've been a member for years and I can't say women here. Yeah. Katharina Sabilka. And what she says is, as long as generations change, but our struggles stay the same, I will be a feminist.
Yeah.
And here we are, 50 years of history and probably 50 more years to go because our struggle still remains. Connie?
Oh, that's good. That was a wonderful trip down all the different avenues that we've been in. And now I'd like to turn this over to Ellie, who's been on a lot of those trips. In fact, probably all of them. Time.
Okay, I'm not quite sure if we're just supposed to talk about
I think so.
Ms. or
You can talk about anything
anything we
you
want, okay. I don't know how many saw Caitlin Clark yesterday, but as you know, she's now become this star that she scored more points than the boys, than anybody, including the boys. In a season, and she broke about 2 more things yet last night. Wow. And the only reason I'm starting with this is that I don't know about your morale, but it really has helped my morale, is that we did those cases, the Equal Rights Amendment of Pennsylvania took in the early 70s, took a case against the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association. Girls were not allowed to play interscholastically, only play intramurally. And they were not allowed to be full court. They played half court basketball in Pennsylvania. And we took this sentence which said that no girl could practice nor compete with any boy, and they could not be involved in scholastic sports. That was like, I think that case was 1974, 73 in that area. And we tried very hard. The we there was now in Pennsylvania. We tried very hard to break it without the Equal Rights Amendment. Then after we got the Equal Rights Amendment, this is the Pennsylvania one. We decided, okay, it's gonna be our first case, and we won. And it's taken from then to now. The first thing they would say, the Board of Education, was that the girls, couldn't play the full court because of menstruation. And they went off and on. But their favorite statement, and they would say it all the time for a group of us that were pressing, how would they say it? That the best girl in sports is worse than the worst boy.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they said that over and over, and I wish I could yell at them, nah. It only took us a generation. That's what it's taken.
Yeah.
And I think it's symbolic of what's happened to law. We're now 60% of the law students, 60% or so of the medical students. In other words, we are finally getting to see the results. I still think we need the RA because they're terrified, so they want to unroll everything.
Yep.
And we're now also dealing with a tremendous backlash, which we don't need to go through. But I understand that you wanted us to talk about Ms., and I can tell you at the very beginning in those early days, 72 period, what we used to do, those of us who were very active in the feminist movement, we would go to we knew the magazine was coming out, we would go to the store and move it to the front of the magazine.
Right.
Yeah, and we did it like a lot. Moving them to the front of the magazine. So now we're in a different situation. We own the magazine, and that's because we didn't do a takeover or anything like that. Gloria Steinem asked if the Feminist Majority Foundation could please take it over. And and I'll talk very briefly and then turn it to my colleague, is that essentially in doing it, we told her from the beginning, we would have to change the structure. And because they were selling advertisements, and we knew where that was leading us. That was leading us nowhere. So basically, we created it, we modeled it after the National Geographic. In fact, our attorneys interviewed their attorneys because the Geographic, which is one of the biggest magazines in the country, and I think at the time we were doing this, which would have been 20, I don't remember the exact date, it's about 20 some years ago. We've owned Ms. longer than any other group has. Anyway, they suggested, and we loved it, is that we turn it into a membership, just like National Geographic, membership group. And that's what we did. And that little thing saved huge amounts of money. In other words, we restructured it so that we were really a nonprofit group and a community, that we were establishing a community of feminists that could interrelate in many different ways. So, and basically it's worked. It's worked. We have partnership programs. Kathy is so inventive. She kept creating more categories, but in partnerships with groups, and basically being there not only as a printed thing, but as a modern. Now we have. We're on social media all the time. In fact, we're producing daily reports weekly reports, monthly reports. But we're there on the news, and our lists are very, very long, are very big. So we're reaching lots of people. And Kathy can tell you the exact numbers of our social media, but we now have podcasts in addition. We are very active on other social media, what would you call it, forms or levels or you don't know. Yeah, all kinds of exposure. So we're telling the story as much as we can of what this movement is doing. And the movement is, there's no question, our movement is not only domestic, but it is global. And we've tried all different kinds of writers, and one of our proudest things is we now have a whole host of scholars on campus who write for Ms. So that you're getting not only what's happening in the movement, you're getting how the academic community is changing and its opinion on everything you can think of. It's a blog. When I started with this type of stuff, I'm now back to in the early 70s, KNOW, which was an arm of the Now chapter, because a man named Kenneth gave us $1,000 or something like that to buy a monolith. And we were taking the best articles and then giving them to, duplicating them for the beginning of women's studies, the groups. So anyway, it's fun to be at this stage, which is so much, but we can't take it for granted. There is an effort right now to destroy women's studies or to close them. Not only women's studies, but Black studies, LGBT, et cetera. But I don't know what they think they can cut out, because we are constantly, the movement is writing, it is thinking, it's conceptualizing. So you can see all this in Ms. and the digital changes have helped it grow. So let me throw it to Kathy, who has been in charge of a lot of the change and invented a lot of the change. It's been very, very inventive and has fundraised to make it all reality. So Kathy, take it from there.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks. And lovely to be here today. I'm on the Zoom from our West Coast office here in Los Angeles. And it's sort of a fitting day to be looking back 50 years, because as you all know, at the Supreme Court this morning, the arguments were heard over whether or not the FDA's regulations on mifepristone were going to be turned back and gutted, or they were going to be allowed to stand. And indeed, it was 52 years ago, about now, that the first issue of Ms. Magazine came out, a freestanding issue on newsstands, and featured a petition signed by 53 prominent women declaring that they had had abortions and that it had made a difference in their lives. It was the first time, the Washington Post a couple of years ago credited that petition and its aftermath with changing the course of the abortion rights movement in this country, because it made visible that which had been invisible, which were the women whose lives were benefited by abortion. And today at the big rally outside the Supreme Court, a huge scroll was unfurled that I think contained the names of tens of thousands of women, tens of thousands, declaring that they had had abortions and had been benefited. So it's, 52 years later, the fight goes on. And one thing that we know is that public opinion has exploded around this issue. And Ms. and the feminist movement writ large, all of the groups have contributed mightily to increasing public support for abortion. And today in fact, Ms. and the Feminist Majority Foundation just did a poll last September, a nationwide poll. And when voters are asked whether or not they think that an individual should be able to make their own decision about reproductive health care, including abortion, contraception, and continuing a pregnancy, 74% of voters said they agreed that individuals should be allowed to make those decisions without government interference. And that includes a significant number of Republicans, especially Republican women, who understand this issue. So, you know, at the time that Ms. was launched, at the time that many of our organizations were formed, you know, the whole idea of feminism and women's rights was a minority movement. Today, we're a majority movement in a major way. And that majority is swinging elections and deciding elections. And on this issue alone, it will be a top issue for women voters this fall, especially for young women voters. Despite what the New York Times or the Washington Post say in their polling, we know that it will be an issue. And so Ms. has played a critical role throughout the 52 years now that it's been in existence. It's a part of the movement. It is where ideas are shared, where people can come together who may not be active in a local organization for women's rights, but can find out about what's going on across the country and around the world. It popularizes ideas and strategies for change. And since we took it on in 2002, was when the Feminist Majority Foundation began publishing Ms., we've been very consistent about, you know, none of this change just happens. And we want readers to know, and the Ms. community to know, which organizations are moving forward the change, so that they can become active in those groups and support those groups. And so we cover everything from abortion access, contraception. We were among the first magazine nationally to report on the Equal Rights Amendment, and we have been reporting on it ever since. We're the most thorough, in-depth reporting on the Equal Rights Amendment so that our readers know what they can do. We were the first to report on sexual harassment. It was on the cover of Ms. Magazine in 1977. Long before Anita Hill testified and most of the world understood what sexual harassment was. We have reported on Title IX every step of the way and the impact that it's made on gender-based violence, especially on college campuses, and how to combat gender-based violence, on LGBTQ rights. We were the first to have an article in the 70s on pronouns. It was the Big Pronoun Debate was the name of the article. On marriage and on relationships and on laws impacting women's rights in marriage, on employment discrimination. We have a whole section now on women in democracy, because you can't have a democracy without fundamental rights for over half of its population. And so we report on the attacks on democracy through a gender lens. Which is different than what you read in other publications and other popular media. We report globally. We've been covering the gender apartheid issue in Afghanistan since our earliest days that we've been publishing it. But Ms. even reported before on what was happening under the Taliban before we took it on. And so Ms. is a comprehensive source of ideas, information, strategies, connection. We're very proud of what we've done under our leadership with Ms. As Ellie said, we not only publish the magazine 4 times a year, we have a daily newsletter, a weekly roundup on the weekends, where I lead with a letter that gives my take on what's happened in the past week. On Wednesdays, we do a weekly newsletter on what's happening on women's rights from a policy angle. There will be coverage this afternoon on what happened at the Supreme Court this morning from leading experts. And tonight on MSNBC, in the 9 o'clock hour, our contributing editor, Carrie Baker, will be on to talk about what happened today at the Supreme Court and the broader implications of what would happen if the court decided to cut back access to mifepristone. We also have podcasts. You can get to them on MsMagazine.com, our website, Ms. Studios. We We have many different types of podcasts now with Michelle Goodwin, who's a constitutional law scholar at Georgetown and an expert on global reproductive health and rights. Our website has over 5 million readers a year. We're in college classrooms with our Ms. Classroom program. So we are, we always say that Ms. is needed now as much as it ever was, given the attack on women's fundamental rights here and around the world. And we hope all of you will join Ms. if you're not already a member. And we can, if I don't have the QR code to put up, but if you, I don't know, Sue, if you brought the postcards, but we can provide you with the first year of Ms. free. And then you can decide how essential it is in your life. And I'll bet you that you stay with us. And then as we mentioned, we published this year, actually last fall, the 50 years of Ms. It's the best of the pathfinding magazine that ignited a revolution. There's an intro by Gloria Steinem. It was a very hard job to pick out what are the best articles and letters to the editor from every decade, but we think we did it proud. And there's something in here for everyone, and it's a beautiful, beautiful publication. The Knopf, the publisher, did a wonderful job. It's a hardcover. You can get it on Amazon at a discounted price now. I hope you'll buy it. It's a wonderful gift for Women's History Month and for year round. So thanks for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for sharing that with us. Sue, where should we go from here?
Now we have a
And
queue
we
up.
have a question, right now.
No, I was just going to make a comment about the book. I bought one for myself, but I also bought 3 or 4 others for all of the young women in my family. For the people in their young women who are in their mid-30s, approaching 40, because they had the benefit when they were in college of beginning women's studies and just, well, they understand now, and I think from looking through the magazine that they still are going to have to continue to work. So it's a beautiful publication. My compliments.
It's packed with information.
Yeah.
It takes you a long time to go in. It's so dense in its content. I just loved it. I thought it was wonderful. So now, should we,
I'd
any
like
other
to add
questions?
many thanks to Ellie and Kathy
Right.
for all of the hard work and great information, and for the free year offer of Ms. If anybody didn't get a copy of the card with the QRL card code, please use it.
And there's no limit to how many times you can use it. So we encourage you to use that QR code to not only sign up for yourself, but for your friends, for your family, for your daughters, for your sisters. We want them to be able to see Ms. And come to know its value in their own lives. So please use the QR code as much as you want. Thanks for bringing that, Sue.
You know, having our own media is imperative, because the story frequently told, and Kathy mentioned the polling that we're doing. You see these polls, and they don't even mention now. They did for a while abortion, but they never mention ERA. And basically, we can say with confidence that the poll that was put out by the New York Times from Synod College is wrong. Wow. And what we know, one of the reasons it's wrong, they said that Mr. Biden was second to Trump. They put in their question on this wasn't just Trump versus Biden. It was Trump, Biden, say the names of the others.
Kennedy,
Bobby
Williamson,
Kennedy,
Marianne Williamson.
what?
Marianne Williamson.
No, it was
No.
Bobby Kennedy,
Kennedy.
Jill Stein for the Green Party,
Cornel
and
West.
and Cornel West. Well, that's a different question. In other words, these third party people, and it's going to change things. I mean, we all know that Hillary lost because of Jill. Was it Jill Stein?
Yes. Green
Yeah.
Party.
And so basically, So we can speak out right away. We would like to do more polling, frankly. It's very expensive. But we have a preeminent poster doing it, so they can't question it's Celinda Lake. And, so we're considering doing more, as we go to the election. But women, there is a massive gender gap. And, but we can say that, we can paint the picture, and I think we have to, because for some reason, the newspapers, especially the New York Times, keeps on leading with negative stories. If they say one more time that he's 81 years old.
Yep, yeah, and the Post too is doing that.
Yeah. What's happened to Kathy over there?
And Ellie, could you
Up there.
speak a little bit more on how not only reproductive rights will be a key issue to help us in the election, but also that ERA will,
Yeah.
and why ERA should be included, and why all of us should be putting more focus on the ERA.
Well, we know one thing, the polling is showing that if you put both ERA and abortion, not just abortion, but have a question on ERA too, the numbers go way up. People get it. They're trying to take our rights away, and they don't want to lose them. I mean, if this crazy case, I can't wait to see Carrie Baker's report, because I had to leave as it was still going on. But if you didn't hear it's so insulting. I can't even explain how outrageous it is. They want to take it off the market because one of the arguments they kept using was that people of conscience who are in the emergency room, when a person comes in from a bad reaction on Miffy, you're forcing them to be engaged in this enterprise. What are they talking about? Number one, it's a very, very, very safe pill. There's virtually no after effects, but one person, but let's take it away from everybody. They want to become they want to take over the FDA, let's face it. This is an FDA approved drug. And if they do this, he's running on eliminating the Department of Education.
Oh,
The new platform why? Probably Title IX is one of the reasons, don't you imagine?
I'm sure it is, as well.
I mean, here's the guy that's going to take away a Department of Education that's establishing standards, and his educational thing was a ripoff. He cheated all those people with the Trump University.
Yeah.
So anyway, I
Unbelievable.
won't get too political.
One of his professors said he was the dumbest kid he ever had in his class. I just thought, well, I guess, if you can judge. The other thing is, I think they're using the race card everywhere. I cannot tell you how sloppy I think the Washington Post has become. I am virtually ready to just cancel the subscription.
Well, let's face it, the new editor-in-chief of the Washington Post comes from London, worked with Rupert for 14 years. It's drives me crazy.
Hi, everybody. This is Marty Langelan on the Zoom. It's wonderful to see so many old friends. And I just want to jump in here and say to Ellie and Kathy, how wonderful you have been all these years. I love 50 years of outrage from all of us. And Ms. Magazine, of course, has been just such a powerful strategy tool for all of us. And I want to say a word about CWI, because I've been a member since it started. And back in the day when we first started the DC Rape Crisis Center, I'm the past president of the Rape Crisis Center in the National Women's Party, as most of you probably know. And back in the day when no one talked about rape and no one talked about harassment, CWI did, and Ms. Magazine did, and has continued to for 50 years. And I cannot tell you what a difference that made. At the Rape Crisis Center back in the 70s, we helped start 600 other rape crisis centers and hotlines around the world. And Ms. Magazine and CWI helped us do that. It was huge. It was the first global discussion of violence against women, and you all facilitated that. I remember coming to the early CWI meetings to say, were going to have a Take Back the Night march in the late 70s. It was the first time women had stood up on a public platform, a podium, and held a march to say violence against women is going to stop now. We did the first citywide anti-harassment campaign right here in Washington, D.C. in the mid-80s. And CWI and Ms. Magazine have been with the violence against women movement every inch of the way. And we could not, as someone who's been here for 50 years, I can tell you, we could not have done that without you. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of all the women, the millions of women worldwide who now have self-defense techniques and techniques to stop harassers on the job and on the street and in sports. And I just have to, this is a love note from a fan. I got to tell you what you have meant to me, and I stand in for tens of millions of other women when I say thank you to both CWI and Ms. Magazine, because you made our lives possible. Thank you.
Karen, I see your hand is up too.
Thank you. And we
Karen has
Sorry,
her hand
Karen.
up.
Are we taking
For the
questions yet, or do we have a
regular
few more?
program, we also have two other speakers.
Go ahead.
We tried to notice what other women's organizations are also celebrating their 50th anniversary. And we came up with several, and two of the speakers from two different organizations are able to join us. Estelle Mitchell, I see on the Zoom. Estelle, would you like to tell us about the 50th anniversary celebration of the Women's Sports Foundation, and anything else you want to tell us about this Women's Sports Foundation?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Estelle Mitchell. I've been with WSF for about two years now. We launched our 50th anniversary campaign at the beginning of this year, called 50 Years of Changing the Game. As many of you may know, WSF is a leader and champion of the entire women's sports ecosystem, and we amplify the vital societal and cultural impact that's made when girls and women play sports. We were founded in 1974 by Billie Jean King and became one of the first organizations to recognize the powerful connection between access to sports and equity and society. And we, exist to enable girls and women to reach their potential in sport and life. And since our founding, we've invested over $100 million to help girls and women play, compete, and lead in sports and beyond without barriers. So our year-long celebration will showcase our impact and the impact that sports have made on society and culture since our founding in 1974. And we are going to use the year to highlight all the ways that we fight for gender equity, to champion the entire women's sports ecosystem in the years to come. Our work is backed by some of the world's greatest barrier breaking athletes and leaders, and it has been for 50 years, and we hope for 50 more and then some. The Women's Sports Foundation has been at the forefront of protecting Title IX and advocating for greater awareness and compliance, building and funding programs that make it possible for girls and women to play and coach at all levels, combating inequities that occur across the women's sports ecosystem, including access to sport generally, pay, media coverage, and sponsorship dollars, just to name a few. We also educate the public on the long-standing positive impacts of sport participation, and we aim to engage everyone from parents, sports enthusiasts, to brands, organizations, and corporations to support and invest in girls and women's sports across the globe. We really do believe that equality in sports leads to equality in life, and so our work is very intersectional, and I'm really grateful to be among this group of people, and we're just really grateful for the Clearinghouse to kind of give us the moment to recognize our work, and I'm really glad to be in this company, and thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again on your congratulations on the 50th anniversary. And Melvina, for from equal rights advocates in California is also supposed to be on Zoom, and there she is. Hi,
Thank you.
Melvina. You
Thank
want to
you.
tell us not only about the equal rights advocates and the 50th celebration, but your new award from the Mackenzie Scott Foundation.
Yeah, I am so excited to be amongst all of you. I mean, I think about the Women's Sports Foundation. I have a teenage son who's an athlete, but one of the things that makes me so proud is how much he follows the U.S. national women's soccer team and Caitlin Clark and basketball, that he is really becoming such a great supporter of women athletes. And just to see that play out on a personal level is a testament to all of the work that the Clearinghouse for Women's Issues and the Feminist Majority Foundation and Ms. and that all of you have done over all of these years. So I appreciate you including equal rights advocates in this important convening, especially during Women's History Month. As you said, we're also celebrating our 50th year anniversary of gender justice impact in employment and education. From our very first case before the Supreme Court in 1974, fighting pregnancy discrimination, to passage of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act in 2023. ERA has been on the front lines with all of you for the past 50 years. And we are thrilled that ERA was recently recognized by Mackenzie Scott's Yield Giving campaign for our work. The reviewer specifically talked about ERA's campaigns for Equal Pay Today, for example, which is a coalition of state and national organizations around the country continuing to fight the battle for equal pay for women and other marginalized communities. Since its inception about 10 years ago, they've passed over 40 and supported over 40 state measures to increase pay transparency and increase pay equity for women and girls. Also, just from there to the work that we're now doing on making sure that all of the federal infrastructure funds, about $4 trillion of which is going to flow into the American economy, is used to create good jobs for women, moving low-wage women into jobs that are family sustaining, and into traditionally male-dominated jobs where they can build wealth and support their families. Also, our Stronger California network, which is a coalition of organizations focused on economic justice, which in 10 years has passed 50 bills in California, increasing economic opportunity for women and families. And then also looking at how we can duplicate that success in other states around the country, both on economic justice and also sexual harassment, and really just following in the footsteps of many of the feminist icons that are here today in this meeting, and make me so proud to be associated with all of you. So again, we are very thankful that you've included us in this conversation, and we're excited to see what the next 50 years will bring for all of these organizations.
Thank you.
And in addition to a couple of other organizations that are also celebrating their 50th, the Women's Division of the American Psychological Association is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, as is the Women's Department of the American Federation of Government Employees. And I was associated with or members of both of those organizations, so I got the notice. But if you all know of other feminist organizations that are celebrating their 50th this year, please let us know, and we'll put it in our newsletter when we write up a report on this wonderful meeting. I'd like to ask if there are any other comments, Holly?
I have a party favor for everyone. Okay, just by chance, I asked my granddaughter when she knew that girls and boys were treated the same. And I just am offering that because I've now repeated it, having gotten such a great idea. And her answer was, without a moment's notice, she said, when I wanted to play soccer and there were no girls' soccer teams. And so I can't report all the times I've asked, but I've asked repeatedly, and there's always a good answer. I'm criticizing myself as I'm telling you this because it's mostly girls I ask. I should be asking boys and men too. So I just think it's a good introduction to the subject. So I wanted to share it
You
with you.
could write a book on this, Holly.
Another book.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a book.
Okay, Karen, you've been so patiently waiting.
No, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you had a couple of other speakers, and I just want to say thank you to all of you who are there, and particularly the Clearinghouse, because the amount of information that's come out of that organization and the amount of awareness of other organizations is really important. I represent the National Women's Political Caucus, which celebrated our 50th year about 2 years ago, and our job is solely to recruit, train, and elect feminist, pro-choice women candidates who will change the rules that have been keeping women back for many years. And I'm proud to say that the California State Senate will be over 50% at the end of the November election, which is because of who's in the runoffs, and the assembly is getting very close. And I've seen improvements in other states. I want to thank particularly Ellie and Kathy. Ms. changed my life. I started reading it from almost the time it came out. I was the only woman doing television news in Fresno, California at the time. The Federal Communications Commission said, we have to do some programming for women. So they told me, okay, you get a half hour once a month to interview somebody on women's issues. And I took ideas from Ms. and a philosophy from Ms. I think I have every copy I ever bought or received in a subscription. And it continues to change my life. And anybody who's not subscribed and needs to get on board immediately. And we need to sustain and support these organizations, all of them, because I see a lot of threat. And I think that as positive as things are today, I see huge pushback, and all of us are going to have to fight. I will say I listened to some of the arguments in the Mephisto case today. It does not appear that the majority of the Supreme Court is persuaded that there's any reason for them to overturn Mephisto changes, but that's today. Who knows what will actually come out in June? And there's nothing to stop them from taking a case on a different basis. Standing of the organization that brought the suit was the issue for justices today for everybody, but excuse me, but Alito. But additional cases could be brought. Their laws are being passed everywhere. So we need all of us to be continuing to work together. And I thank you. I wish I could be with you in that meeting, but I thank you so much for pulling this together and highlighting these organizations.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Does anyone else around the table or
Sue, I
on
would
Zoom
like to
want to
say
say
something.
anything? Jan,
Yeah,
President.
I'm going to echo what Karen said, because as a young writer and newspaper columnist and reporter, Ms. Magazine was so important to me back in those days. I just think it's been so many years. But the important thing to say about Ms. Magazine is that it gives us a voice nationally and globally. And I'm so happy to read about what's happening in other countries, and maybe hopefully in the future we can get more members to join the Ms. Magazine effort. We can get more reporting globally. Countries used to look at the United States and feminist advocates here for leadership. Unfortunately, I think that is now going to become a thing of the past, especially with what happened in the Dobbs decision and losing Roe. But Ellie and Cassie Spillar and the late Peg York and Gloria Steinem and all the staff people at Ms. Magazine from day one, I think we're all visionaries. And they were all very savvy strategists, which is what we need, because like Karen said, we're going to have more fights in front of us. I work it now, and I tell young feminists that they have to read Ms. if they don't already do that, and to subscribe to the online newsletter. That is the most important thing that people need to read. If you don't read that, you don't know what the heck's going on. So I just want to thank Ellie and Kathy for all the great works they do, and especially Gloria Steinem for having the guts. I think really it took guts in those days to launch Ms. Magazine. So and I want to thank them for talking today, because again, this was a great learning experience.
Ann?
Yes, thank you. I just want to put in a plea for DC, Washington, DC statehood. We just the League of Women Voters just celebrated our 104th anniversary.
Wow.
And we are
Yeah.
hot on statehood. We want it. And if you go to lwvdc.org, you can, right on our front page, you can sign the petition for DC statehood. We want to go statehood 2025, assuming and hoping that we'll have a better climate in 2025. And we're developing momentum. So as the chair of Full Rights for DC Citizens, I really hope that you all will just go to our website and sign the petition and get your friends to do it. Because imagine if we had 2 senators with progressive ideas and all right, enough said.
And does everybody know about the popular vote compact?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, DC
All right, give it a
is
short
a signatory.
summary.
Who wants to give a short summary on the popular vote compact?
That's the one where we want to change from an electoral
Electoral
college to
college,
an
right.
actual,
Exactly.
right,
Well,
vote.
DC is a signatory. Ours will be electoral votes. So since we have them because we can vote for president, we said, yes, we'll contribute our 3 votes to whoever wins the popular vote. And that's, I think I don't remember the number now, but there are a number of states who have also said that, but we're not up there yet till it goes into effect. We gotta have a full.
Who was that just asked?
And
Lois.
So I would just make a quick comment to follow on these comments about Ms. As a young woman coming from a traditional household where mother was a homemaker, did things outside the home, but dad was the breadwinner, traditional. And then I was a young woman, only female in an intern program in NASA, a male. Ms. was just Maud and Star Trek were my go-to destination viewing, and then Ms. just gave me confidence every month when it came to the door. It was just, I can't tell you how much it has meant to me, for all these, I won't say 50 years, but for so many years. It just, I feel like it certainly helped me in my path as in the professional. So that's keep up
Lois,
the good work.
Lois Frankel wondered if Kathy Spillar and Ellie Smeal would give their perspective on the current landscape and future of publications that are dedicated to women's issues.
Good point.
Oh, boy.
Good question.
That's another whole program.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole other program. That's
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
So,
And with this woman, Rona McDaniel, being
Oh,
added to,
look at how miserably she's been treated, and she's supposed to be one of them.
Well, they're trying to get her off of NBC.
Yeah. Oh,
well, they
yeah.
should.
Absolutely should.
No, I'm talking about the way
She
the
was
Trump
false.
camp. I can understand why they don't want her on. They think she's a plant. That's what I think.
Well, she may be.
Yeah.
So
One of the
anyway,
things, you know, you asked how do you keep it up? I think we have to just be determined. I mean, we are under attack right now.
Yep.
We are, I don't know what stage of a backlash, but, and it's big money. And now it's involving, Russia and Ukraine, what
China.
happened to Afghanistan, which were I think that we gotta figure out ways of raising more money. I'm gonna be this blunt. I mean, one of the things that has given us a little more of a head start, us being the Feminist Majority Foundation, is we had a major philanthropist who's now passed, Peg Yorkin, and who believed in it, just really believed in us having an organization, and came to work for us, even though she was our biggest donor by far, every day until she got sick. And I think that we have to understand that our country is in terrible trouble. But the one thing I've learned from our work in Afghanistan, we've had a program on Afghanistan since 1997, this is now the foundation, and it's given me and the people who've been involved a total other realization. I mean, this isn't about language, and this is not about culture, and this is not about religion. This is about people who want to be dictators and corporations which support them because it makes it easier. I believe that all this has a relationship, for example, to the oil interests. And we're up against big money. But we can do it if we just not only say, we got the people, not only women, although obviously our strength is women. We have a lot of strong men too, who have, right now they're among our volunteers. In other words, it isn't all. I think when you get to realize what we're up against, we need more power. And we need more grassroots. And I think that we can't give up the grassroots orientation because it's a big country. Of course, the reason why DC doesn't have the votes is that gives us, not just us and feminism, it gives the progressive movement, the civil rights movement, all the various, and basically, if we don't do something soon, we're talking to a world that is going down.
Yep.
I mean, these people are not doing anything hardly for the environment. And I think that, I don't know how many of you have read the books that say that one of the things that slowed the women's vote was the alcohol interest. They thought that if we got the vote, we would outlaw alcohol, which we did. And so they know their opponents. I think that one of the oppositions to us as the oil interests and the people who want to keep doing what they're doing, knowing that it is terribly dangerous for the climate and et cetera. And so I keep thinking that we need to rebuild those coalitions so that people understand that if we all work together, those of us who are worried about the environment, the gun thing, the women's thing, the race and gender, I think together we can't get beat. And I feel that I feel very strongly we're at a turning point, and we've got to win this turning point. When I was in I can't remember what meeting, doesn't matter. I found out that, this new college thing, where they closed the women's studies department. Well, I talked to the leader of the women's studies department. It had 11 professors and herself making 12. One I was talking to, 11 have left. And she was going to leave. And I said, why? We can help. And she said, because they're threatening to kill me. And I thought, they're threatening to kill you. I was expecting any answer, but I wasn't expecting that. She said that there's a neighbor next door who has a baseball bat, and he says he's going to beat me to death with the baseball bat. And he keeps on threatening me. She said, I can't take it anymore. Then I went to a thing for Biden in Pennsylvania, and this woman had just won a seat in the House, and she became the tie-breaking vote, right? And I said, well, you must be ecstatic. She said, I'm worried. I said, why are you worried? She said, I only won by 67 votes. And I said, why was it so close? And she said, because they threatened to hurt people who didn't vote with us. More threats.
They're doing it all around.
I said, they threatened to hurt people. What are you talking about? She said they had thugs working there. Ask anybody here in Pennsylvania that just stood election. They're threatening to liquidate you. And so I just can't get over it. And then you look at what happened in Georgia and Arizona. Again, more threats. I just think that we have to realize that this is not an ordinary election.
Right.
I never had to think about things like that. I thought we were gonna win or lose, but I sort of think that this is the election that could stop other elections. And so anyway, I know that's sort of mixed up, but those are all the kinds of thinking, because I do meet people from all over the country. This is different what's happening, but the loyalty to the women's movement and the feminist movement, or we're gonna get the environment changed, or we're gonna stop guns, is also overwhelmingly strong. And I just think if we all pull together, and we did this at our conference, we just had a youth conference. And the thing that I was so encouraged by is that there was as many young people going to the Afghan panels that we as they were going to the voting panels, as they were going to ERA and abortion. In other words, they saw the intertwining. And I was very proud of them that they felt that we had a duty to help to make a change. Anyway, we can't give up now, and all of us, as we think about your trusts and wills too, because I just was at the Belmont House. They took the kids through a tour of it, and I had no idea. I thought that was the house at which Alice Paul and them were working for not only the vote and ERA. This will kill you. Do you know that that was not the house? Is anybody else surprised?
Yeah,
Yes.
I know that.
You do know that. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that was the house that they were working. I know they worked for the ERA out of that house in the 70s because I was there. But the forest ranger, who was a total feminist, said they had a bigger building where the Supreme Court is. They lost it because of, what do you call that thing when the state takes on?
Eminent domain.
And they demolished that house.
Before, Ellie, when you were sharing about the youth, Jan and I just had a conversation about, and listening around this table, you're speaking to all of us who really know we have so much to do. But it's the next generation that I'm a little bit concerned about, and the fact that the education that we all were talking about now in the history, how do we get your generation, young lady, and the other generation, young lady, the intergen, more about the history of the struggle and how important this is. As we were sharing earlier on conversation, I do have a lot of faith in you guys. Yes, generation. But you have to, it's like we have to continually share the history. You have to know from how you got to where you are. And the feminists that fought, we all fought very, very hard and long so that you could benefit today. But you can't, it's because
Can't rest
now,
on your laurels.
absolutely, and there's challenges.
Well, but
So the whole question is, besides what you shared earlier with the books, and I'm looking at it from the university level and young people just beginning to vote, to learn about how important it is, this election period. So that's my comment, but also, what's the magic wand?
but it's
I just want
important.
to, this is Marty again, Marty Langelan. I just want to chime in and say, kudos on all this, Ellie. I couldn't agree more. This is a turning point election. And yes, we absolutely need all the young feminists, male and female, to show up and vote.
Yeah.
There's a group down in, I believe it's North Carolina, called You Can Vote. that's doing a wonderful job of registering young voters, and they do follow-up to actually get them to the polls to vote, which is the second step that I think is absolutely essential. But I just want to say, courage is contagious. One of the things I've loved about being part of this movement my whole life is the courage that all the feminists that I've seen, not just Ms. Magazine and CWI, but around the country, around the courage of other women standing up for what's right, going to vote. Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, I look back at that courage and I think, okay, if they could do it, we can do it. Courage is contagious. We need to share stories of courage.
But as much as we praise organizations and we benefit so much for their guidance, it still has to be a personal action. And I just want to say, I'm just so tired of hearing saving our democracy. I just want it, when you hear saving our democracy, just ask. I'd save it if we had a democracy. Give me the Equal Rights Amendment, give me the district, and I'll work on saving it. But don't tell me we're saving democracy, something we don't have.
We have to live our democracy.
I just want you to say, when you hear saving our democracy, everyone should have a collective gag. That's what I said.
Well, the way that I say that is saving democracy. The way you do that is you expand it.
Yes, amen.
A, B, C.
But maybe we could get a different slogan, but what they're saying is, what we can, go picket and demonstrate and how many demonstrations, marches and everything, there won't be that because you'll be threatened to be killed. I know that for our African American sitting here leadership, that the South and many other places threatened to kill the people who voted that were African American. But I can tell you though, there was always a movement and you can get change. If in fact we lapse into a tyranny, it won't be possible. And I think that we have to, I think we could be close to that. I really feel that I'm going overboard, but I really feel the Russians tried to influence our election, and with Hillary's election, I think they're back again. I think that I think it could get much worse. But what they really mean by saving democracy, it's the dream of democracy. It's the ideal of it.
Yeah, but if we think we have one now, you are misguided right now.
No,
That's my point.
But people don't, I mean, we're fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment because we want to be equal,
Absolutely.
right? But we want
totally
to,
agree.
but so it isn't that we think that this is perfect. It's the goal is to form a more perfect union. And that goal could be eliminated by people who vote for this terrible man this time. I mean, he could drive
Or
us back
don't vote, the
100
people that
years.
choose not to vote.
What?
The people who choose not to vote.
That's a vote for him, but
Well,
you don't
that-
vote.
That's
people-
exactly
And I think that one of the things, if you were at the conference, you'd see how these kids they want to change the world and want to do all of our goals. And a lot of them are coming from women's studies, from Black studies, and that's why they want to get rid of them.
Oh, of
Right.
course.
But we have to not only value what we have, but we can have much better. I mean, obviously, we're not satisfied. We spent our whole life trying to change this thing, but you do see some changes. I mean, I wish that Gloria Sackman Reed, who was a woman who one day said to us, the best girl is worse than the worst boy, and said it more than once. These were the officials in Pennsylvania, not Arkansas, not Alabama, but in a more, she finally got up and said, if you say that one more time, you'll see how strong women are.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so Gloria, wherever you are, it's a
need
different
you.
world.
Yeah.
And I think but it isn't a perfect world, God knows. And just imagine these poor women now in Afghanistan went from a hopeful democracy, trying to be anyway, to a takeover by the Taliban, to then the last 20 years they had freedom, they could, schools were opening, they had over 1,000 universities, and then these monsters come back in. And yet there are women who are just determined to get rid of them. It's gonna be hard. We're trying to get gender apartheid declared by the UN as an international crime.
Bravo, bravo.
Good, yeah. But they're being strung up, beaten, imprisoned, and killed simply because they're feminists. We can't put them down.
The role of violence, this is Marty Langelan again. The role of violence in imposing fascist governments is well established for the last generations. And the use of it by the Republicans is truly frightening. Ellen, you're exactly right. I'm actually a local election official, and there have been threats even in suburban areas like where I live against election officials for having honest votes. It is truly frightening, and it's at every level. MAGA is in the suburbs, not just out in rural areas. And I think that the way you stop violence, having spent my life dealing with violence against women, is collective effort. One of the fastest ways to stop violence on the street is bystander intervention. And Ellie, what you're talking about is organizing a coalition nationwide of environmentalists and anti-gun activists and feminists of every variety to do bystander intervention politically on a huge level, that we all stand together and we all call out the violence as what it is, which is the threat of ending voting. It's not how you vote this time, it's the threat of ending our ability to vote freely. And you're not wrong to take that threat dead seriously. I take it very seriously too. There are organizations like Common Cause that last time around, and for this election as well, are training many tens of thousands of volunteers to be at every polling place where thugs might show up to do bystander intervention. And it's best based on the feminist research and work on how bystander intervention stops violence. And it doesn't work every time. There's no magic anything, but it sure works a lot of the time. And so anyone who would like to help actually make sure that thugs do not derail our election, that violent threats against election officials and candidates for office and against voters don't stop people from voting, should give a call or sign up to Common Cause and get trained as an election observer to help make sure. I've done it a couple of elections now, been an election observer, and had to defuse situations to make sure people felt safe waiting in line to vote. And it's a set of simple bystander skills. They work across the board, whether it's street harassment or a thug at a polling station. But bystander intervention, standing together, is the single most effective way to face down violent thugs. That is politically true nationwide, and it's individually true with street harassers. So Common Cause is training election observers. Please spread the word, and young people can do this. I think that the grandmas are especially effective at stopping thugs at polling stations. The guys don't argue much with us when we step in, but you need to be trained to do some intervention. It's not just mouthing off at the thugs. There are some techniques that work. Common Cause, again, is very much somebody who should be part of this coalition for women's freedom, for human freedom that you're talking about, Ellie. And good program. We're not helpless against violence, is my point.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for our 50th anniversary celebration. And let's continue the fight in coalition. And our next meeting is April 23rd. And there's another group that can join our big coalitions that you need to learn about. That's how feminists can work with others who are going to be fighting Christian nationalism. That's very important to our liberty. And we're going to learn from Americans United and a famous author on Christian nationalism on April 23rd. You'll get your notice if you've signed up and are a member. So thank you all. And let's continue to work together with all of our organizations and defeat our opponents.
All of them.
All of them. Thank you.
Thank you.